Think of your town hall as a mass protest. I've often wondered why people spent their time protesting. It seemed to me that it creates an awareness, but in the end, there isn't any action that really affects change. Now, votes elect the person. Passing a bill creates a new law. Voting and passing a bill culminate in my mind in specific actions that have impact. I never saw an action I felt was directly associated with mass protest. Now, just the other day, I saw a podcast with Katie Couric and Professor Timothy Snyder on how the people of Hungary overturned a fascist dictator who had been in power for 16 continuous years. They discussed what caused people to vote Orban out of office while facing unsurmountable odds like large sums of money, the power to change voting laws, and all of which the incumbent Viktor Orban had at his fingertips in Hungary. Up until that podcast, I was not a major supporter of protests because I never saw action created by mass protests itself. All the big protests, the women's marches, everything, I never saw that. Professor Snyder changed my opinion about the effectiveness of mass protests. Listening to his explanation to Katie Couric of Orban's downfall, it struck me that mass protests themselves don't create change. But there is a lot that happens within a mass protest life cycle. If you discuss what it takes to conduct a mass protest, like the uniting of people at the local level and face-to-face interpersonal communication, to discuss and validate the purpose of the protest, it says a lot. The team energy then develops into defining, planning, and executing a mass protest. That's a lot of work, a lot of interaction. These small activities within a community create pathos, which is emotions, and egos, which is logic, and logos, which is credibility that unite people towards a shared purpose, things that Aristotle knew some thousands of years ago. The more the community discusses the purpose of the mass demonstration, your town hall, the more the local activities they perform help unify the community who support the town hall by simple daily activities like creating slogans and then making signs to carry, defining a location for the mass town hall to happen, thinking about the safety of those who participate, and many more activities that require groups of people to know more about each other and the value each brings to the protest. Often this group of highly proposed individuals elect or select a leader to guide and direct their ever-growing body of individuals. I'm beginning to see mass demonstrations as an end product of a group of unified individuals who have bonded around this common purpose and are in fact the people who will exact their vote for change when the time comes. In a way, the mass demonstration serves as a catalyst to help people realize all the facts and visualize what needs to happen and use their very powerful vote to affect that change. The more of what Professor Snyder calls little everyday work happens, the more local communities unite to vote for what they believe. As these communities begin to seek others who align with their purpose, you begin to enlist more and more powerful votes. Most importantly, you begin to have stronger interpersonal communication throughout an ever-growing community with a common purpose. So this got me to thinking, why don't we think of town halls as mass demonstrations instead of the politician scheduling a town hall to discuss what the politician wants to discuss? Why don't we flip the purpose of a town hall from a politician talking to people to a mass demonstration presenting to politicians what the people feel their needs are and whether those needs are in fact being met by the elected officials. Okay, so today's paradigm of politics doesn't recognize the full value of the voter. Hence, we have voter apathy. Voters, much like my business organizational studies indicate about American business, they have a low satisfaction rating of politicians, which leads to low satisfaction level within government, which in turn has led to low participation by the people, and also brings us poor voter turnout. Now, town halls should become much like mass demonstrations. By organizing people into a district group to focus on the purpose of defining agreed upon needs, we unify citizens into a specific group to identify the top 3 needs everyone would benefit from, like lowering costs, cost of everything, having better wages, everybody wants better wages, more control over rising rent, better local transportation, better public education, lower costs for upper division education, just to name a few potentials. I saw that just a discussion I had with some maintenance workers around the apartment I live in. There were 3 of them or 4 of them I think there were 4 of them standing around. And so we got out and I went out to say hello. We got to talking and the discussion obviously led to politics. And there was a variety of differences between the 3. And I began a quick discussion and I simply said, let me ask you, I want each of you, so this is an exercise that you can literally do with anybody you're having coffee with. I said, look, here's what I want each of you to do. Right now, don't say it out loud until I ask for it, but I want you to think of the top 3 things that is absolutely the most important thing, the top 3, forget about, just the top 3 things that are really critical that you have to have, that you really want to see happen from our government creating an environment for you to live in out here, okay? And let me tell you, I had a pretty good representation at 4 people. There was a minority that was black. There was a Hispanic. There was a person who was white who come from a very conservative background, but he was a Gen Zer. Okay? He's a Gen Zer area. Well, borderline millennial Gen Zer. And they started, I said, okay, let's start with you. And I went from left to right, and I said, just the top 3. Boom, 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 boom. And they started listing these off. And sure enough, the top three figures were: one, we need to have a way to reduce cost. It's killing us. I have so much less in discretionary money. Then there was the idea of, I need to be able to earn enough wages so that I can at least feel comfortable, that I feel secure and safe in my job, and that I can make enough so we not only are able to eat, but I'm able to take care of the family and take care of my kids and know that they can go to school and new clothes every year as they're growing out of the others. And then the younger person was interested. He says, I just want to know there's going to be an opportunity for me to live comfortably in the future. So it all came down to almost two: economics and income were two big things that somehow we need to change in this country. And there are things we're doing that are creating that problem that we could reverse and would solve that problem, but we're not doing. So I asked them, I said, I bet none of you here have attended a town hall. And actually, two of them had. And one of them was that young kid. Well, not young kid, I'm sorry, that young man, much younger than me. The millennial, Gen Z, or borderline person. He actually attended the town hall. He has an open mind. But they were excited. They were invigorated. This was an old guy talking to three younger generations, people I'm a boomer by a long shot, and they are much further down the line. They are in different generations altogether. And across all those generations, we were having this discussion and whether something was happening or wasn't happening, and whether facts were there or whether it was just our emotions that were getting in the way. We were actually talking about why we are having difficulty talking to each other. And it was a fascinating thing to see. And it felt good. It's things that I used to experience when I was inside an organization building a team or putting together a culture that worked well. When people weren't, the biggest problem, people weren't talking to each other effectively. They were not connecting. They were not a community. And then all of a sudden they came together. So if we mobilize and organize town halls the way you would a mass demonstration, people would increase their awareness of their needs. They would recognize the things they have in common versus what divides them. They alone would define the value of what people feel government should be focused on. That is a democracy. Town halls as demonstrations puts the people in charge of the meeting versus the politician. The purpose of the town hall would take on greater unified purpose. The local community, activities, and all that personal everyday work that Dr. Snyder talked about, those activities increase interpersonal communication, which tends to unify people around common goals. Now, a town hall takes on a couple of very important roles. First, it can be used to vet candidates for office. A selected panel from the district could present predefined questions that the audience had. By the people they all agree on would determine the candidate's skills to meet the people's needs. So they could hear those responses. And you could get a lot of questions in that way. Secondly, the town hall can be used to determine the extent that elected politicians are delivering what the people decided are the key needs to be addressed through legislation. Are they doing their job or not? If legislators are delivering the laws that impact the district positively, then what we should see is the reverse of the existing paradigm we have today. We should see a unified community where interpersonal communication is increasing within that community, not through social media, not over the internet, people to people talking. Satisfaction with politicians should increase, and consequently, satisfaction of how the government's being run should also increase throughout that district and every other district in the country that operates the same way. And if all districts adopt the paradigm, we should see significant satisfaction with our government throughout America. God, wouldn't that be great? No more bitching. Basically, we will be shifting the government controlled by politicians, bought by oligarchs, to a government where politicians are held accountable by a unified people. And you will see a lot of different laws passed about how they have to operate. And you know, that all begins with you. You and your small community. We need you to do that. We need you to create those communities, put together those mass demonstration town halls, hold politicians accountable for what they do. It's then that we'll get some laws and some actions from a lot of people together, instead of what we tend to see on TV is a bunch of people bitching and griping at politicians, and the politicians just ignoring them and walking off stage because they know you can't do anything for 2 more years. And they also, when I see that happen, when I saw politicians leaving the stage after people were telling them and literally with a lot of emotion, a lot of anger, were telling them their issues, it was an absolute total disrespect for people's role in this government. But you know, we have to take some blame for that, because that is what we've allowed to happen. So now we create a mass demonstration in the form of a well-organized town hall. A town hall where we can get answers from people that we can evaluate and decide as a community whether they're the right people to lead us or not. That will put in laws that restrict them from using us to become wealthier and gain reputations while we suffer. All that changes. Like I said, the same thing happened in my business organizations. Once we began to get these communities and leaders began to learn how to effectively connect with their employees. Employees started feeling good about their leaders, and we went up into the various levels all the way to the top, and then across all departments interacting with each other. Once we got those communication tools in place, people were beginning to enact all of those leadership skills effectively. Behaviors were changing, cultures were changing, and the organization was changing. All for the better. More satisfaction with leadership. Consequently, people were staying on the job. Guess what? Like I said earlier, they were beginning to engage and get excited about the job. I'm for mass protests in a big way now. I hope you guys are too. I enjoyed the time we've had together here. Thank you so much for paying attention. Please remember to subscribe to the channel's Communication Excellence. My name is Victor L. Vogel. All right. You have a nice day.